There is a secret Microsoft doesn't want you to know. This $3 trillion company has reached a crisis state that only a few are truly aware of. To the outside world, Microsoft looks invincible, but on the inside, it is slowly crumbling. The problems Microsoft faces are far worse than Wall Street believes. What we are seeing now is just the calm before the storm. And critics are starting to panic. Most would argue that these are self-inflicted wounds, issues that could have been avoided. But instead, they are the direct result of decisions taken every day by leadership. And these decisions are destroying Microsoft's ability to innovate. The technology company we grew up with is gone. What we have now is just a leftover of what it once was. It has become something else entirely. It has become a $3 trillion shell. A hollow giant that looks like the center of innovation, but mostly just owns the leverage, the partnerships, and the contracts, while the real breakthroughs are increasingly purchased, partnered, or packaged. To understand this, we have to start at the beginning. In the early days, it wasn't about the money. It was purely about the love of technology.
I don't think anyone at the company is in it for the money. It's a much more exciting field than trying to measure exactly how much we're selling or how much it's worth. The creation of these programs is something you can sit down and see people enjoying and solving real problems.
Bill Gates and Paul Allen built Altair Basic in 1975, one of the first sparks of the personal computing software industry. Then came the deal that shaped the modern PC. IBM needed an operating system. Microsoft supplied MS-DOS through licensing, turning software into the asset that mattered more than the hardware. Windows scaled that strategy. By the mid-1990s, Windows wasn't just software. It was the default interface for work and home computing. Then Office took over institutions. Microsoft became huge because it built core platforms, then defended them hard. Then came Steve Ballmer.
I love this company. Yes! Developers, 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 developers,
Steve Ballmer inherited a machine built for desktop computing, and for years, Microsoft still printed money. But in consumer tech, the story got messy. Here's the part people forget. Ballmer's Microsoft still created sparks that felt like the future. Xbox was a defensive move at first, but it turned into something real. Then Kinect happened. Kinect set a Guinness World Record as the fastest-selling gaming peripheral. The Surface brand was introduced and was well received, but then the roller coaster hit the drop. Ballmer's Microsoft produced a chain of famous misses. But to be fair to Steve Ballmer, at least it was clear he was putting up a fight. He was trying. He launched the Zune in response to the iPod, even if it arrived in a market Apple already dominated. But the biggest bet was mobile. When Apple launched the iPhone, Ballmer dismissed it at first, then ended up responding with the Windows Phone. In September 2013, Microsoft agreed to buy Nokia's phone business. 2 years later, Microsoft wrote down about $7.6 billion related to that business and cut 7,800 jobs. By the time Ballmer left, Microsoft was still rich, but it was losing the next platform era in real time, the smartphone. And that's when Nadella arrived.
The real question that needs to be asked as well as answered is, what is it that we can do that is unique, that is impactful? We're going to empower every individual and every organization to do more and achieve more.
Satya Nadella became CEO in February 2014. And under Nadella, Microsoft executed one of the cleanest business transitions in tech, from one-time licenses to recurring revenue through subscriptions and the cloud. The market value went from roughly $315 billion when he took over to $3 trillion territory. But this is where the story gets uncomfortable. You see, stabilizing is not the same thing as rebuilding a culture of original invention. Nadella made one decision early that still shapes everything today. He walked away from the phone platform. This is the one thing that continues to haunt Microsoft to this day. From a business perspective, it made sense. But from a platform perspective, this is a permanent handicap. You see, the smartphone became the primary computing device on Earth. The default AI assistant lives inside iOS and Android. And Microsoft is now largely outside that operating system layer. And there are no other ways around it anymore. What if I told you Microsoft is becoming an empty shell? It sounds crazy, I know. But if you don't own the primary consumer platform, how do you stay relevant? For Microsoft, the answer has been to buy its way back in. Under CEO Satya Nadella, the company has shifted from building to buying. Think about it. LinkedIn, GitHub, Nuance, and the massive Activision Blizzard deal. These acquisitions expanded Microsoft's footprint without it having to invent any new consumer platform from the ground up. This explains the shell concept. Even on the PC, Microsoft doesn't control the full stack like Apple does. Windows runs on silicon from partners like Qualcomm, Intel, and AMD. That creates a huge coordination challenge, which is why Microsoft is now spending billions on its own custom chips and data centers. The cost is absolutely massive. Microsoft's entire structure is now designed to own, distribute, and monetize, even when the core innovation comes from others. This brings us to the biggest buzzword of the decade: AI. The AI ship is sailing, and it seems like Microsoft is barely on board, risking missing yet another platform era. The Microsoft AI story is real, but it's also unusually dependent. You see, major players like Google, Meta, Anthropic, and even OpenAI are building their large language models from scratch. Microsoft, on the other hand, has Copilot. And here's the problem. Copilot isn't a real LLM. It's just a wrapper, a coat that other companies' models get to wear. When you use Copilot, you can literally switch between using ChatGPT or Claude under the hood. Microsoft can integrate OpenAI's models into its products, but OpenAI is still a separate company. This creates a massive strategic dependency, and Microsoft knows it. This pressure is likely a factor behind the recent layoffs, the closing of physical retail stores, shutting down beloved Xbox studios, and killing off projects that fans loved. It shows Microsoft is optimizing for a specific kind of dominance: scale, distribution, and recurring revenue, not necessarily innovation. So what happens next? I see three possible futures for the tech giant. First, Microsoft could become the new IBM, deeply profitable, deeply embedded in the enterprise world, but mostly invisible to the average consumer. Second, the partner risk explodes. If its relationship with key AI partners like OpenAI changes, Microsoft will have to pivot incredibly fast or risk becoming irrelevant. And third, internal innovation continues to wither, leading to a slow decline for the original company. It's one thing to scale products. It's another thing entirely to create the next platform from scratch. Microsoft isn't going to vanish overnight. It has mountains of cash, incredible distribution channels, and a powerful lock-in on enterprise customers. But the big question remains, the one that will define its future as either a true technology leader or just a monetization machine. When the next real platform shift arrives, will Microsoft build it themselves, or will they just use their cash to buy a seat at the table? Thanks for watching.